We went to church on Sunday and we came back home. The freezer must have died somewhere over the weekend because as we opened the garage
Wow.
door, the liquid, now mind you, it was only like 4 or 5 hours, right? The liquid just started running down and the stench of decaying meat.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my goodness. My husband was like, if you hadn't been with me, I would have sworn you unplugged the freezer. I was like, nope. That is the big man upstairs saying we are done. And
Hmm. Hmm.
haven't had meat or dairy since. And that's been on, what, 13 years now.
You're listening to the Plant Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage. We're here to plant seeds on compassion to animals, your health, and the environment, and topics related to business that align with all three of those areas. Enjoy the show. Lori Marbas, MD, MBA, is a double board certified physician in family medicine and lifestyle medicine and has been using food as medicine since 2012. She is the founder of The Habit Healers, a growing Substack publication that explores the intersection of behavior change, metabolic health, easy for me to say, and healing habits through deeply researched and highly engaging writing. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes because you definitely want to check out drlorimarbas.substack.com. But I'll put the link so it's live and you can go right there. She's also the founder of Doc and Chef community with Chef Martin Oswald, where healing starts with nutritious and delicious food. Dr. Marbas holds medical licenses in all 50 states and Washington, D.C., and currently has a concierge medical practice at drmarbas.com, providing personalized care rooted in evidence-based lifestyle interventions. She's also the founder of the Metabolic Transformation Lab, where she makes the science of healthy living accessible, delicious, and sustainable. Currently the CMO for Metabite.com, Dr. Marbas was also instrumental in launching the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention as its first managing editor for the Plantrition Project. She hosts the Habit Healers podcast, where she interviews experts and shares actionable guidance to help individuals reclaim their health through habit-based transformation. Dr. Marbas earned both an MD and MBA from Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, where she was awarded the prestigious Gold-Headed Cane Award for Excellence in the Art of Medicine. While raising 3 young children during medical school, she authored 7 books. Only 7? I can't believe that. 7 books, including the widely used visual mnemonics series, which simplified complex medical topics through cartoons, a tool born out of necessity and designed for real-world learners. A U.S. Air Force veteran, she has served in the Middle East and South America. Today, Dr. Marbas continues her mission as a physician, author, speaker, educator, and advocate for healing through habits. Her greatest joy in life is with her family, traveling and hiking the great outdoors around the world. Dr. Marbas, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your having me here on your show.
That was quite an incredible bio, and I actually remember you being on the Health Science podcast with Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I was so impressed with what you shared with him. And I really want to dig into lifestyle medicine, food as medicine, and how you help people reverse chronic diseases that actually are definitely preventable. So let's start with your own journey. What first sparked your interest in plant-based eating?
That's a kind of a fun story. So it started in Rifle, Colorado, of all places, a town named after a gun. What a place to start your plant-based journey. And I had just got out of the Air Force a few years earlier, and we settled in the Rocky Mountains because we love to be in the great outdoors and hiking. Could see the Colorado River from our front door. So you kind of get it's a rural, smaller town. You kind of get the feeling of where we're at. But I had a patient come in one day because I worked at a local hospital where we did everything. ER, you do uh, in your regular clinic. You also have hospital rounds and all those different things. And so it's a really interesting dynamic. It's like old school family medicine. And what was interesting is I had this one patient come in one day and she said, Dr. Marbas, meat and dairy upset my stomach. I was like, well, stop eating meat and dairy. So this was back in 2012, early 2012. And I made note of it. Intuitively, I understood there were other foods that would be available for her to eat. It's not like I was like, oh, what is she going to eat? Like, you understand there's other foods. But it didn't dawn on me this is a vegan diet or a plant-based diet. Like, this was literally just stop eating these foods that are upsetting your stomach and come back in 30 days and we'll see how you're doing. And when she came back in 30 days, but she had a visitor with her, it was her 16-year-old daughter. Now, what was interesting about this was that she made her daughter miss school and to come to her mother's appointment. So in my head, as a mom and a doctor, you're going, what kind of discussion am I going to be having with this 16-year-old child? Is it, the sex talk or something, is what's going on? But what was interesting, she goes, well, tell Dr. Marbas what you did. And I said, she's like, well, Dr. Marbas, I wanted to help my mom, eat without meat and dairy. So we cooked together. And you have to understand, back in 2012 in Rifle, Colorado, you had two grocery stores. You had Walmart and another little grocery store. There
Hmm.
was no plant-based foods or anything like that. Like you bought food and cooked it at home. And so what happened was she goes, in those 30 days, I felt so good. I stopped both of my ADD medications. So, or ADHD, it's like attention deficit disorder
Hmm.
medications. So, what was really incredible, she goes, I feel so good. I don't want to take those anymore. And that's a remarkable, just in the fact that one, that a child could have the awareness and have her mom support her in this of stopping a medication that she, typically was like, hey, you have to have this. You have ADD. You're going to be on this medication the rest of your life. You can't function in today's society without this medication. It has really some significant side effects. And that alone carries a weight is just incredible to think about the freedom that she got in 30 days of eating
Hmm.
no meat and dairy. And what was interesting, now mind you, this she's eating at home whole foods. She's not buying ultra processed stuff that's available now. And that's the other really important factor here. And her mom looked at me very serious, not in an anger tone, but just like, why was she able to do that? Like, and I was like, I don't know, but that's the most amazing, coolest thing I've ever heard. So we started talking about what they were doing and what the making. So basically, I was like, this is like a plant-based diet, right? And so when the appointment was done, I started Googling. It was like plant-based diet ADD, and what came up was the China study by Dr. Campbell. And so I ordered it, and it was delivered, and I read that book. And mind you, if you've ever read that book, it's
I
kind of like
have.
a Gregor. It's like a Gregor book, right? It's like what 300, 400 pages. You're reading it. I was reading it like a fast-paced novel. For
Hmm.
me, it was such an intriguing concept that you could heal with a simple lever of food. And understanding that junk food was not healthy and sugar and all that, but I didn't quite understand the broad impact, right? And so I was really fascinated. So I finished that book in 2 days. And I remember my husband walking by and when I would be reading, because I was sitting on the floor at the end of our bed because I was just so like, oh my goodness, this is
Hmm.
amazing. He'd walk by and I go, they are turning off cancer with plants. And he goes, okay. Like, I don't think he quite understood what was coming down the pipeline very soon in his own life. So what was interesting was I was like, okay, number one, how do I do this myself? I have three teenagers at home at that
Hmm.
time. They were 13, 15, and 18 then. And now I'm thinking also, how do I bring this into my practice? Because there was not ready access to like, this is how you start a plant-based diet conversation with a patient. These are the things you have to watch for, like hypertension and blood pressure medications. Like none of that was clearly available to me. I found a few articles by Dr. McDougall speaking directly to physicians, and I had Dr. Greger's, videos back in the old days that gave me some clarity on what the food could do, but I still
Hmm.
didn't understand the full thing how to do it. So as I was reading and learning what I could, I had another patient present within a few weeks with lupus. Now, lupus is a very serious autoimmune disease that can be terminal. It can destroy kidneys. It interferes with pretty much any system in the body. And they usually require quite significant immune suppressant drugs. Sometimes they're cancer drugs. They're high doses of prednisone. So
Hmm.
this patient was in her goodness, she was younger than me at the time. So I think she was in her late 30s at that time. She'd been diagnosed with it about 2 years. And when she came to see me, she was on 12 different medications. She was 50 pounds overweight and she was having migraines almost every day. And she came in, she's like, Dr. Marbas, I don't think I can keep working. And she had actually, in her mind, the whole discussion that we were going to talk about was disability. That was where she wanted
Mm-hmm.
to take that
Mm-hmm.
conversation because she just saw no other outlet. She was on high doses of methotrexate, which is as a cancer, it can be used as a cancer drug or immune suppressant. High doses of prednisone. She would see the specialist. To see specialists in rural Colorado is difficult. Most of the time, you're waiting for a specialist to make their rounds, or you have to travel over the Rocky Mountains to Denver, which is about a 4 hour drive. And if you've ever driven over the Rocky Mountains in the middle of winter, it's not for the faint of heart. And so anyway, we very limited ability what we could do for her. And the medications that were already prescribed, I mean, like there was not a whole lot left that I felt comfortable as a non-specialist, like a non-rheumatologist, because I was just family medicine, to prescribe her. But as she was telling me all of her symptoms, in the back of my mind, I'm going, this is the one, this is another patient I need to share this with. This was my
Mm-hmm.
very first patient that I intentionally said, I think I have a different type of solution. I was like, would you be willing to try changing what's on the interview fork? So I told her about the patient before. I told her about the 2 weeks of knowledge that I had and how it was decreasing inflammation, body-wide
Mm-hmm.
inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm willing to try anything. She was in such a bottom, in the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. Well, before she left, I said, but we have to measure your CRP before you leave. And this is an inflammatory marker you can measure in the blood. And it was 300 times normal. Okay, even on all those
Wow.
medications. So I said, and when you come back, I need you to come back in 2 weeks. I don't want you to spend, I don't want to wait 30 days. I want you to come back in 2 weeks. So she came back in 2 weeks, and I was so excited to see her. She had lost 8 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Her inflammatory markers had dropped 300%, so it was just outside of normal. Her migraines were gone. And if you fast forward 5 months, she lost 50 pounds and came off 7 of those 12 medications. Now, that was a Friday, and I was so astounded by just such a rapid succession of feeling better for her, like all of her symptoms, just kind of disappearing
Mm-hmm.
and needing less medication, even much more immediately. At that 2 week mark, I was like, okay, I got to go home and change the family. This is where the rubber meets the road. I have
Mm-hmm.
to walk the
Mm-hmm.
talk. I can't tell you to do something if I don't believe in doing it myself, and if I can't do it myself. So I literally went home. I put my purse down. I never will forget this. I laid down my purse and I was like, guys, we're going on a whole food plant-based diet and we're getting rid of everything tonight. And he's like, my husband's like, are you still cooking? And I was like, yes. And he's like, okay. And the kids at this point, my parenting was always like, this is our household. We run the house. You guys help run the house. You go live in your own house someday. You do what you want. But here, this is what we do. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to be a short order cook. You cook what's in front of you, or you'll eat the next meal because you'll be hungry. This is the way it is. And my kids aren't picky because of that attitude. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have time in medical school to cook 5 different meals. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I wasn't raised that way. They weren't raised that way. And we had eaten already a pretty healthy diet because when I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money. So we always grew our own food.
Mm-hmm.
My folks would slaughter like a pig or quarter of a cow for the whole winter. So we had a lot of beans. We ate beans almost every day. We had vegetables. We had some fruit. We never had ultra processed food because it was too
Right.
expensive and a waste of money. And my mom's like, I can make, you get some grits that'll last a month
Mm-hmm.
versus, some box cereal that's gone in a couple of days. And so that's how I was raised in thinking. And so it actually was to my benefit, not realizing that. But anyway, so I went home, I cleaned out everything, I threw it in the garbage bag and took it outside, like the eggs, the cheese, the milk, everything that was not plant-based. And I had a quarter of a grass-fed beef in my freezer in my garage. Now, this is a large amount of meat, and you don't just like chunk it. You live in the middle
Right.
of Colorado. There's animals you don't want to attract with meat. And so I was trying to think to myself, what am I going to do with this? I'm not going to give it to anyone because I don't believe in that now. And so what was interesting that Friday night, we got rid of everything. We made some beans and stuff. And as I was trying to figure out how to start cooking without those elements, and we went to church on Sunday and we came back home, and the freezer must have died somewhere over the weekend because as we opened the garage
Wow.
door, the liquid, now mind you, it was only like 4 or 5 hours, right? The liquid just started running down and the stench of decaying meat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my goodness. My husband was like, if you hadn't been with me, I would have sworn you unplugged the freezer. I was like, nope, that is the big man upstairs saying we are done. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
haven't had meat or dairy since. And that's been on what, 13 years now.
That's
And
incredible.
that's how it started. And it's a really fun story because it's a unusual place and an unusual number of circumstances that fell into place to make it happen.
It seems like everything aligned perfectly for you to be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah.
And which, in light of everything that's changing with healthcare, people need to start really taking control of their health more than
Right.
they have been. But now, okay, so you went from the freezer dying and, the liquid everywhere and
Yeah.
stench and all that.
Yeah.
Well, how did you start incorporating that more and more into your practice? And now you do telemedicine.
Yeah.
And you practice in all 50 states, which is
Yep.
incredible.
Yep.
Because some doctors, if they practice in 3 states, that's pretty incredible. But you are a high achiever, obviously.
Well,
But
there's a reason I got the 50, but
okay, well
we can get to that.
let's talk about the reasons you got the 50 states, and then let's talk
Okay.
about how your practice has really transformed and morphed into what it is today.
I think I would segue just a little bit. So when that happened and we went all in and I started sharing it more and more with patients, I literally spent like I wrote out about 30 pages of instructions on how to do a plant-based diet, and
Mhm.
I always highlighted 3 habits in the beginning. So I've always been curious about habit behavior and habit structure and
Mhm.
all that. So whenever I'd see a patient come in, I would pick, I'd have 25, 26 patients on my doc for the day, my docket. And so literally I would go, okay, these are the 3 or 5 or 6 that I'm going to speak to that I had enough time to feel comfortable with.
Right.
And I would hand them the sheet. I'd print out everything. I'd highlight exactly what I wanted them to focus on and what to look for. Over a year or so, that's how I started learning and developing. I learned really quickly when we had to stop 60 units of insulin within 72 hours with a type 2 diabetic that was insulin dependent. I didn't quite understand then how quickly the body wants to heal. And
Mhm.
when you give it the right environment, it will do what it's supposed to do, right? But
Mhm.
we keep making daily decisions that inhibit that ability, right? And so the body's always trying to find another way to get back to that healing state. And if you think that way and believe that way, it gets much easier to align your actions and your behaviors. And so what was interesting, the reason I went on to get all 50 medical license was as time went on, you make friends in the space, right? You meet people that have lost
Mhm.
160 pounds and 140 pounds. So I met a gentleman named Anthony Masiello and we
Oh
became
yeah,
fast
Anthony, I know
friends.
him.
Yep. And he was like, Lori, we need to start a telemedicine company. This is right around the time that I was already doing some telemedicine. I had worked with
Mhm.
Dr. Joel Furman, and I was his medical director for a clinic up in Florida. But what happened was that clinic closed, and I went to telemedicine just as I thought as a bridge to get to my next gig, so to
Mhm.
speak,
Mhm.
in person. But I found that I really enjoyed it because it allowed me to see patients pretty quickly. I could work from home, wherever that might be. And I could be very I don't know. I like the mobility of being able to see
Right.
different people in different places. So I'm not limited to just whoever's plant-based in my city who can come see me. I literally can see, I've seen patients in every single state. And from the out in the middle of the wilderness in Alaska, no
Mhm.
kidding, to
Mhm.
Wisconsin, to Florida, to and everywhere, anywhere between Kansas, you name it, Missouri, you did every single state, North Dakota. So when you start thinking about the reach of telemedicine, I was like, well, this is where I'm going to just stay. But I was working for other telemedicine companies doing more of acute care, but I would
Okay.
slip in that lifestyle medicine or fairly,
Mhm.
more plant-based medicine discussion. So Anthony's like, Lori, we need to start our own telemedicine company. He's like, are you insane? It's like, do you know how hard that's going to be? Well, he kept insisting, so we started, and it took us about a year to actually get ready to launch. So we launched, no kidding, March of 2020,
Oh geez.
right when the pandemic hit.
Right.
And lo and behold, this is when telemedicine just blew up, right? Because you can't go see your doctor regularly. You need help. Telemedicine, it just like the pandemic literally paved the way. And so again, I'm a true believer in serendipity, that there are no coincidences, that if you are doing the right thing for the right reasons, your path will be revealed to you. There's no doubt in my mind. It's
Right.
happened to me over and over and over again in my life. And over the next 2 years, 2.5 years, I'd already had, I think, around 16, maybe 20 license at that time. I went on to get all 50 and DC, just so that we could see everybody. And we started bringing other doctors in. We brought in Dr. Michael Clapper, Dr. Chris Miller, and some other amazing physicians who I
Hmm.
think some are still working them. But over the next 2 years, we ended up selling the company. Anthony stayed at the company. I chose to cash out because I wanted to go a different path in using insurance with lifestyle medicine and try and see what I could do there. So we sold it to John Mackey, who started
Hmm.
Whole Foods.
Hmm.
And then I moved to California and we started another company called Mora. And we did that for about a year and a half, but it was a little more difficult and more time consuming than we had, I would say, resources for or the
Hmm.
capability. So that was in 2023. And so then I just like, I'm doing my own thing. I am gonna just do my practice, solo practice. My two boys, I have three kids. My daughter's a physician in Boston, and my two boys work for me. They do my marketing and tech and
Right.
all that good stuff. And so that's why I went on to get 50 medical license, and I've maintained that over the years, just because it's really opened some really interesting doors for me in conversations over the years, and just really provided a breadth of experience that I would have never gained otherwise. Because I've seen thousands and thousands of plant-based patients
That's
over the years.
amazing. And
Right,
and really one of the challenges that most of us have is if we want a plant-based doc, it's hard to
right,
find one. And
right.
I know that things are changing with telemedicine. Now, is your telemedicine, is it insurance dependent or is it
Uh-uh.
independent of insurance? So
I
people,
don't accept any insurance. I don't
okay,
accept Medicare. Unfortunately, that's how I had to do too. If you think about the landscape of insurance, it's difficult for a patient to navigate. It's even more difficult to navigate especially a solo
okay.
practitioner. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you have a hospital or a multi-partner practice where you have the resources to go,
Right,
and most of those are going to be regional. But when you're looking at a practice around the whole country, right? If we had a single payer system, I would probably have no problem.
right,
But we have 1,000 payer system, right? And unfortunately, that system is very difficult. So you have to be credentialed in not only each region, you have to have a physical office, so to speak. Some don't accept telemedicine, they don't pay. Some, that's about a 3 to 6 month process to get credentialed. You have to be licensed in that state. Then you have, it's just a nightmare. Then you have insurances denying claims, so you have to have a whole
right.
back office to support. So for me to do that, it's not worth it. And what I do provide though is what they call a super bill. So let's say I see someone, I bill them the amount they pay, and I will provide them a receipt of service that they can, if they have out of network coverage, that they can actually give to their
Oh,
insurance company.
okay, okay.
Unfortunately, Medicare does not allow you to do that because I opted out of Medicare because I couldn't see if I was still opted into Medicare, I could not see a patient and accept their cash payment because they had Medicare. So I opted out so I could actually see
Wow.
Medicare patients. And now Medicare patients are being penalized because they cannot submit to be reimbursed for someone like myself
Right.
who offers, a different look and care, and you see tremendous value in lifestyle medicine. It's really unfortunate that the system is built the way it is. So I chose to step out and navigate around it the best I can. And for me now, I'm moving more away from. I still see patients, but it's a much more limited space to more around the education, and that's how the Substack came to be about a year ago. And
And give that
that's been
Substack address again. I want to make
yeah.
sure people go there. And
Yeah,
I'd be curious to know how that's working for you.
it's going very well. So I started January 6th, and the reason I started Substack, I'd seen some other folks use Substack, and I
Hmm.
love writing. Obviously, I wrote 7 books. I've had a newsletter for many, many years. I've written for Lance Armstrong's back in the day.
Hmm.
Geez, when the internet was just getting out, for really just I've written for our local newspapers. So I love to write, and so my who was I think someone else mentioned that I should start a Substack. It's like, I'll give it a try. And so I launched my first few and it was just kind of slow going. And then I had a piece on the 10 habits of people who age well. It just went nuts on
Okay,
Substack.
okay. I want the Substack address, and then I want to know what the 10 habits are. I want to see how many of the 10 I'm doing because actually I'm very healthy for a woman my age, and actually for a
Yeah.
woman 20 years younger than me, I'm pretty darn healthy. But let's start with the Substack address. So how do people
Okay.
find that?
Yep. So it's drlaurie.marbas.substack.com. And so it's DRLAURIEMARB as in boy, AS.substack.com.
Okay.
And yeah, and so the piece here that's important is called the habit healers. And the reason I called it the habit healers was because I see two things happening. We either have habits that are not healing, that need to be
Hmm.
healed, but these are not habits that we should hate or be, judging ourselves for failing and all these habits. That habit showed up for a reason. It showed up at a time in your life that you needed that habit and it provided some benefit. Maybe, it allowed you to feel a little bit better by drinking, or eating something that was chocolatey and decadent, and it made you feel better for a little bit, right? It was meant
Hmm.
to your
Hmm.
your your mind is looking to feel better, right? And so that's how I look at it. These are habit loops, right? So this is a matter of that habit needs healed, not necessarily to stop cold, but like what can
Right.
we exchange the behavior, right? And looking at that as a more of a detective and as an architect of your behavior versus judging yourself and feeling bad and feeling like you failed when things keep repeating themselves. There's a reason. And it's not because someone is not, disciplined enough. It's just that we're
Right.
in a weird world now. This modern world is, we were
We're in a
not
very
made.
strange world.
This
Yeah.
is a very crazy world right now, and we need to be able to have the tools to be discerning about what we're doing and thinking and seeing, and that you can do it. And so that's one way. And then how to build healing habits, right? So what does that look like, and how to make it so small that it becomes really easy. So that's what we called it, the habit healers. And so I was writing an article every day, and I just freaking love it. And so we moved the podcast over there as well. We changed it from the Dr. Lori Marbas podcast to the Habit Healers podcast.
Huh.
And I really started honing in on this audience is like my patients, right? So they're mostly women. There are definitely
Hmm.
some men. They typically are middle aged or older. Maybe they're very healthy looking. How can I work on my longevity? Or better yet, I'm struggling with prediabetes. I'm overweight. I'm in
Hmm.
menopause. I'm in
Hmm.
perimenopause. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling crazy. So these are the things that I write about. But I bring in the research. I try to use storytelling in a really in a way that makes it one not only easy to digest but also memorable, because you're
Right.
going to remember a story. You're going to be less likely to remember a list of six things. And so if I can bring in that story element, that's the really important piece. So the article I mentioned,
The 10 habits.
the 10 powerful habits of people who age well. I talk about a story of a woman in Rifle. And this woman was in her mid 70s. Now, if you've ever, I don't know if y'all, if when you go to the Rocky Mountains, there's like 14,000 foot high peaks, right?
Right.
And if you go to rural Colorado, there's folks that live out in the boonies. Like you have to get on a dirt road and ride,
Hmm.
and people have ranches. Now, if you have ranches, you have fences, and those fences have to be stringed with wires and things. She always came in once a year unless she got injured or something. And she always just, we get her blood work. She always is, I'll tell you, this lady is so fun. She literally from the head up had all her makeup on. She had, remember my mom was born in like 1951. So I remember her high school pictures of the beehives. Like she always had her hair up kind of
Yes.
like in that
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
fancy pattern. And but below it was work shirts, it was her Levi's and her boots.
Or work boots.
And
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, steel cut, like steel toed work boots
Of
too, not
course.
not
Of
some
course.
fancy. So she'd come in and she'd call me darling. She'd call me all sorts of, I love it. Oh my gosh, I love this woman. And so every time I just tickle, I just love talking to her. She had been digging, you know, fence pole holes.
Hmm.
Like with the,
Hmm.
have you ever done a pole?
Yeah, we
Like,
have we have acreage out in Oregon. So
yeah,
we do, the other day for an
exactly.
hour I hauled wood, so yeah, I got it.
Exactly.
I got
Yeah,
it.
so these for those who don't know, if you imagine like a hoe, like a rake, you get the long and the post hole diggers are two, there's two of those handles and you push it down the ground and you pull up the dirt and you
Yep.
chuck it down. Now, I've done this when I've had to fix a fence on my suburban home because the backyard fence, because when you're a young couple in medical school, you don't have a lot of money, you do things yourself. You pour the concrete, you put the post hole in, you do those things. Like, but I was in my 20s and my 30s. She's in her mid 70s,
Right.
and she's just, she's got biceps that people would drool over. And so this woman came to me, I was like, I'm gonna write about her. And this is
Mhm.
and the other
Okay.
observations that I've made over my multiple decades of working with patients and just understanding the science and well. So what those 10 habits end up being was one, you see aging as a privilege and not a curse. Because if you start walking into every single day saying, oh my God, I'm getting older, this sucks, your life is going to suck. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm-hmm.
mindset really will dictate your experience in this world. So the moment that you look at this differently, go like aging allows me to understand that I have wisdom that I earned that I wouldn't have had in my 20s. I'm so amazed. I don't get to make the same stupid choices every time. At least that's how I see it.
And if
And
we
the
make
other,
them, we don't really care.
no, exactly. You made it by choice, right? So I also said, we need to start seeing birthdays, not as birthdays as, oh my goodness, I'm a year older,
Mm-hmm.
but milestones of mastery, right? You have
Ooh.
another milestone that you have mastered something in your life. And I love to reflect on that. And that was number one. Number two is that they move daily with purpose, right? She's digging, holes in the ground without any problem. They're very specific and they make movement a part of their daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to the gym necessarily, but it's like maybe they're out on a pickleball court, maybe they're running a race with
Mm-hmm.
their kids,
Mm-hmm.
we did obstacle courses with our kids growing up, well into their
Mm-hmm.
teens. And I was in
Mm-hmm.
my 40s. Um, We've done all sorts of hikes. So, we go rafting down the Colorado River. We did fun runs, like all those type of things. You were doing stuff with community or something. So it's always with purpose. And really, I think it's something that feels good. Maybe it's dancing, something like that. The other piece is they really prioritize building muscle over worrying about their weight. Because with strength comes functional capacity. And with functional capacity comes less likelihood of falling and
Mm-hmm.
injuring yourself and falling out of your day to day ability to do just carry groceries or go up and
Mm-hmm.
down stairs. I do not want to be 90 and not able to go up and down one flight of stairs.
Right.
Right. And so that is where, strength and muscle are really important. It's a metabolic powerhouse. That is how we navigate so many things, is really thinking about functional strength. Next was eating for longevity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not short-term goals. So many people think about when they eat their meals, it's like, oh, this tastes so good. I just want it right now. So instead of trying to feed an emotion or something, what they do is they're like, what can I eat that comes closer to, from the earth or in
Mm-hmm.
nature
Mm-hmm.
and really sustains my health. And it doesn't cause me to have crashes up and down.
Right.
They're staying away from ultra processed foods. And many times, just like when I grew up, I developed habits of eating. I wasn't plant-based, but I had a lot of plant-forward
Mm-hmm.
decisions in my life. That really helped me because that's how I carried through the rest of my life. And I know that when we'd eat ultra processed foods, we didn't feel well. Now, my husband, on the other hand, he grew up eating, they were prior military,
Mm-hmm.
his folks, and he reminded me that they would go to the commissary, which is the equivalent of a grocery store on base. And when they would come, they'd buy all this ultra processed food and driving home, he and his brother would have downed an entire bag of Cheetos. This was a
Mm-hmm.
normal
Right.
living circumstance for him. So when we had gotten married, he had been active duty. Well, we met in college, and he went immediately into the Air Force. So you always had the military as an external pressure to
Mm-hmm.
remain healthy and at least keep your weight within a certain
Mm-hmm.
uh, parameter. Well, when he got out of the military, he bloomed up. And when we went plant-based, he lost 70 pounds. Now,
Wow.
we had
Was
been
that what he
married.
had gained after the military?
Yes, and it was
Wow.
slow over the years, right? And so
Right.
when you think about it, at that time, we got married in 1993, so that was in 2012. So we'd been married almost 20 years.
Hmm.
And is that right? Yeah, 20 years. And so over those course of a couple of decades, he'd gained all that weight. And
Hmm.
within 3 months, he lost 70 pounds,
That's
right?
incredible.
And really fun stuff. But anyway, that's the other piece is like, eating for longevity, and really just protecting your brain, right? So really thinking about what does that mean? This means using curiosity and learning, right? And never think that you're too old or too disabled or not smart enough. You have to have a growth mindset,
Right.
right? And so when you use your brain to just like, I need to continue to learn, continue to look at curiosity. That is how we start protecting your brain. Now, granted, I understand some people are going to be dismissed or dismayed by that. And it's like, oh no, my whomever did this and they had a great lifestyle and they still ended up with Alzheimer's. I am sorry, but I'm not saying that they did anything to get that,
Right.
and I'm sorry that you had to suffer through that. But for the majority, there are absolutely things you can do in your day-to-day life to decrease the risk. And
I'm loving hearing this. I'm loving
yeah,
hearing this. Yeah.
exactly. So learn something new, challenge yourself every day. I think the next one was purpose, right? What's the purpose? Like my patient in Rifle was she had a ranch to run.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, my purpose is to see my patients and to educate the world on how their daily habits can literally change how they live their existence on this
Hmm.
earth.
Hmm.
Literally, every little decision you make adds or subtracts from your health account, and you get to decide. Nobody else is forcing you one way or the other. And your circumstances can be limited monetarily. You can still eat well.
Hmm.
And trust
Absolutely.
me, I've lived that experience. And people like, oh, you're a doctor. I was like, no, I need you to understand. Like my folks, they were bankrupt twice. We lived in a
Hmm.
trailer house. I
Hmm.
mean, trust me, I get it. I went to school that clothed the clothes my mom made me.
Right.
And so, this is something you can do. It's just a choice. And people sometimes don't like to be confronted with it. They got to where they are most of the time because of the choices they made, and they can get themselves out by changing
Absolutely.
choices.
Well, if they don't take responsibility, they can blame somebody else and then they never have to make a change. So,
Yep.
okay, so
Yep.
we've got six so far. What's seven, eight,
Yep.
nine, and 10?
The last three are mastering your stress response, really understanding that stress is a choice in a sense. Like you may have some acute stress, but when you're chronically living in the future or, residing in the past, that
Hmm.
stress that you build, those stories, that is a choice. And understanding there are some things you can do like deep breathing,
Hmm.
walking, gratitude
Hmm.
practice that can really shift your relationship with stress. And then the other one is just building a community and nurturing relationships and get rid of, honestly, walking away from toxic relationships.
Right.
Just because, there are people in your life that are quote unquote family doesn't mean that they deserve a space to cause, toxicity and stress and disrupt your living just because you
Right.
happen to be born out of circumstance into that family. And so that's a really important thing, but we don't want to dismiss people either. Of course, there's going to be ups and downs with their relationship, but nurturing relationships and showing people that you care and building that, one or two really good, deep friendships. You don't
Hmm.
have to have 1,000 friends, but just some deep, really important people in your life that will be there, your ride or die, so to speak. The other one is sleeping seriously. You need to go to bed and wake up at the same time, right? Navigating how you build that space around sleep, not staying up late watching television or eating late at night, making it dark, making it a cool room. Now, menopause can throw some funky monkey wrenches in there, but that can be dealt with. And there's lots of interesting things you can do to improve your sleep. And that capacity really can accelerate aging or it can decelerate it. It can make, insulin resistance more of an issue, which sets the foundation for chronic disease. So sleep is really, really, really important. And
What
then
are what are
lastly is just staying
well, let
open-minded.
me ask you this on the sleeping while we're
Yep.
we're on that piece. What
Yep.
are some things people can do to get better sleep? Because I know that
Yep.
when I go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time, don't read anything or watch the news, anything that upsets my calm before I go to sleep. I have a much better night's sleep. But what are some things people
Yep.
can do?
Well, I'm going to challenge the typical perspective on sleep is that it
Okay.
actually starts in the morning.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so when you think about you're setting yourself up for sleep that night in the morning, it will kind of shift how you make different decisions throughout the day. So the first thing to understand is that we live on circadian rhythms, right? So
Hmm.
there's organs in our body, in our mind that we are part of nature. We are not just little humans plucked out of somewhere and stuck on this ball rotating around the sun. We literally evolved with nature. Like
Hmm.
the sun means something to our brains. And you can call it the reptilian brain or whatever you want, but there's a little gland called the pineal gland. And when you get light, senses it, it's like, huh, it's light. It's a certain strength of light. That early morning light has, certain intensity. It's not as strong as the noon light, but that light, the brain's going, wow, in about 15 or 16 hours, we're going to be need to get ready for bed. So
Hmm.
now it starts a tick, 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 tick. It starts
Hmm.
building up adenosine. Now, adenosine really is an interesting thing because it actually, as it builds up, makes you sleepier later in the day. And so then that's one piece. Now, you can drink caffeine like coffee. I know people who love coffee. I love the smell. I never like the taste, but I drink caffeinated teas. You need to be mindful that that will typically, on average, block the adenosine receptors for about 8 hours. Okay, and so if you may metabolize that a little faster or you may metabolize that a little slower, and so if you find that you may need to pay attention, I'd minimize any caffeine afternoon or maybe even earlier, depending on how you respond. So that's the step one is getting that early morning light,
Hmm.
getting some exercise early in the morning, especially maybe it's a 10-minute walk if it's too cold where you are. If you don't have sunshine that early, you can use one of those lights that I don't know, they're like $30 on Amazon that people use who are those higher latitudes that actually
Hmm.
kind of, there's actually some alarm clocks that the light comes on. It's really
Hmm.
cool. It's like a light box, but that's one thing. And then as you move through your day, exercise. Exercise will allow you to sleep better. Um, the other piece of that is getting vigorous exercise at least 2 or 3 times a week. That will also help dealing with your nervous system. I think there's also a really important thing is just practicing, dealing with stress easily. So it's not just, following you all day. And then when you have a quiet moment that it just compounds, you're like rushes in.
Hmm.
With a few ways to deal with that is meditation. There's mindfulness practices. I certainly know one way that some people can do that is if you have, I call it like it's a place where you can just kind of vomit the day's worries, like a little
Hmm.
journal. You're
Right.
like, here is everything I'm worried about. I'm going to deal with it tomorrow. Your brain's like, okay. And so then you can fall asleep. So when you're dealing with that, that's one thing. The temperature, keeping it around 68 degrees is shown
Hmm.
to be very
Okay.
helpful.
Okay.
Um, the other piece is nice and dark, keeping it quiet. I wear earplugs, not just because it's pretty quiet where we are, but if my dog snores or my
Right.
husband rolls over or something, a car goes by, I will wake up. And so I wear earplugs. I've done it for many, many years. Some people wear mask if their room, but if you can get the curtains that make it a blackout room,
Hmm.
and bed should only be used for a few things, sleep and intimacy. You shouldn't be watching TV in bed. You shouldn't
Right.
be eating in bed so that your brain associates that with bed. And so the other piece is remember that circadian rhythm action is going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, even on weekends. Because when you alter that, when you stay up late, get up late, a few days a week, it's messing up that circadian rhythm, right? Your body's trying to adjust. It's like a jet lag continually,
Right.
right? You're just always dealing with a different time zone. And your body's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to get up late and stay up late? Or do you want to get up, go to bed early and stay up early? What do you want me to
Right.
do here?
Right.
And so you can't, you got to work with your systems. And so that's a really important piece I don't think about people don't think about. And eating your last meal maybe 2 or 3 hours before bed
Yep.
is very helpful. Not
Boy,
doing
I'm scoring pretty high on this whole thing.
so
That's
incredible.
awesome.
The other piece is just not doing really vigorous exercise right before bed.
Right.
And then I would say getting that afternoon sunshine as the light starts to dim is important. Staying off the screens at least an hour before you go to bed. The bright light, remember your mind is going, wow, I see that light. It must still be daylight. I need to stay
Right.
awake a little longer. Those are the main levers. Now, with menopause, there's some other things that can be messing with you. You've got
Right.
hot flashes and night sweats and all these things. Women find that they typically wake up around 3 a.m. There's a lot of things going on. This is where there's a conversation on who the person is, what to do. If you're within 10 years or of menopause or under the age of 60, relatively healthy, of course, it's a discussion with the patient. Menopausal hormone therapy might be appropriate. There are other supplements like magnesium, glycine, some other things that can really help with sleep. Chamomile tea,
Hmm.
they can really help just kind of hit that GABA system in our brain to that's the calming down. That's why some people, when they start estradiol or progesterone, the progesterone is a calming and
Hmm.
anti-anxiety type of
Hmm.
effect, and it really helps alleviate some of the sleep issues outside of removing the night sweats. So those are some conversations that we can have with people.
Well, with the going through menopause, because I know when I went through menopause, that was during the time that my both my parents were very ill, both passed away, and I
Wow.
ate to comfort myself and
Yeah.
gained a lot of weight and ate a lot of sugar. How much does eating a whole food plant-based diet help a woman going through menopause?
I think this is a really important thing for many women. What we're doing is we're removing the chronic disease element, right? So
Mhm.
when you go through menopause, there are women who do very well, right? They go through it even if they do have issues. Sometimes they go through it without a problem, like not an issue.
Mhm.
Then you have individuals when they go through a whole food plant-based diet and they kind of in that transition, let's say, they see some alleviation of some of those symptoms. But
Mhm.
then you have someone like myself, and I think I consider it God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, made me go through this because there are others like me. So I had just was I'm 50, I'll be 55 in a few days.
That's
And
amazing. You look great. You look great.
thank
If you're
you.
not watching the video, everybody, go to YouTube and key in plant-based eating for health, Dr. Marbas, and you will be blown away.
Thank you very much. What was interesting 2 years ago, I had mentioned my daughter's a physician in Boston. We ran a half marathon together, and I PR'd my half marathon in Boston. And what was interesting, I felt amazing. I was in really good shape, lifting, eating my
Mhm.
whole food plant-based
Mhm.
diet, dealing with stress very well. Things were going like so. 2 weeks later, I thought an alien had taken over my body, literally. And what was happening was, and I had never had an LDL, which is your bad cholesterol, over 100
Mhm.
in my
Mhm.
entire life. Like, I've been measuring labs because I was active duty, I was in the medical field. Like, I've been measuring labs. I love experimenting. Never in my life. I don't think I've ever even seen it over like 85,
Wow.
ever in my entire life. And suddenly it was 110. I was like, what on God's earth? Because when I started happening, I started having joint pain that came
Mhm.
out of nowhere.
Mhm.
I couldn't, I'd lay on my side and I was like, what is going on? It hurt to sleep on my side. I started having, I mean, I understood my periods were getting longer, but suddenly my periods just stopped, and which was fine. But what was happening was I wasn't expecting the joint pain, and I was getting hot flashes were getting much worse, and I was eating soy every single day and have for a decade. And I will tell you, the joint pain, the metabolic shifts in my lipid panel, my thyroid medication had to be adjusted because I've been hypothyroid for almost 30 years now, and since the birth of my second kiddo.
Mhm.
Now, the plant-based diet helped me lower that medication in the beginning. I always still had to be on a lower dose, but I had to up my medication
Mhm.
because things were shifting in a very rapid fashion. But the joint pain and the hot flashes and the word finding, I was like, I couldn't think. Like, I wasn't
Mhm.
as sharp. Like, I'm used
Mhm.
to like bam. Like,
Right.
I need my brain. If my brain is not working, I'm like, it drives me nuts. So I
Mhm.
was like, what is going on? And I wasn't myself. And when you're tired and you don't feel good, it made me understand I had a whole nother level of empathy or sympathy with my patients because
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, this is the most horrible experience. And I'm not going to ever be a good sick person. So I just need to stay well. And, um, and so I started diving into the research. I dug deep. I went through all the WHI, the Women's Health Initiative that came out in the early 2000s saying, hormones are horrible. You can't do this, whatever
Mhm.
that. And, I was like, I literally was the epitome poster child of lifestyle medicine, living, eating, breathing,
Mhm.
everything
Mhm.
that they tell you to do. And I still struggled. And if I struggled, I know others struggled. And so I was like, this is ridiculous. So I dove in. I became certified as a menopause practitioner. I chose to embrace hormone therapy. It radically changed my life. The joint pain disappeared. My LDL dropped back down to normal, and I started sleeping better again. My word finding suddenly resurfaced, and I was like, this needs to be said in our, community of plant-based eating. So many times women are told, even through other lives, like if you look out history, women are just like, suffer, deal with it. That's the way it
Right.
is. You know what? I'm like, screw that. This is enough. We're living in 2025,
Right.
2023. I like, this is enough. Women have to understand there are options. And if you're following whole food plant-based diet and something happens, it is not your fault. You're not a failure. It doesn't mean that you should be judged because you didn't do it right or you're not doing it well enough. BS. I call BS on that. And I get so annoyed with some of the comments from other people. They're like, well, if you're eating a plant-based diet, I didn't have any problems. Well, or some men who are physicians in this space, like, well, you don't need hormones. You just need that. I was like, well, until you're a woman and you go through this, then
Right.
you can come talk to me, but not until then. Okay. Off you go. And so that is kind of how I was like, I'm not afraid to share this story and it needs to be shared. And if someone wants to say, I'm sorry, I can't do that, I don't believe in medicine, then you're allowing principle to guide your life versus looking at the data. You are not an open minded person
Right.
because why can't I use medications if needed? Right? It's like telling a type 1 diabetic, you can't use insulin. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, because we
Hmm.
just don't believe in it. So that person just deserves to die. When I have women, literally, I had two this week in my practice. Plant-based diet for over 10 years. Menopause has literally wrecked their lives. And when we start them on hormones and we start talking about the things that we can do, it literally gives them an entire new lease on life. And so I'm not saying that's for everybody. And
Right.
there are some people who are not candidates. And that is fine. And that's part of the conversation. But at the same time, it shouldn't be off the table. When I'm a physician, I use lifestyle first and I use medications next, but it's all part of my toolbox. And if I choose not to use one or the other, that is malpractice. And that is how I live and breathe. And so that is the important factors we need to understand.
I want to remind you that you are listening to the Plant Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage. And if you're enjoying this show, go ahead and leave a rating and a review, leave a like, and share it with a friend because this information is great for people you know who want to find out more about living the plant based lifestyle. Now, back to the show. Well, as we get older, because I'm in my
Yep.
70s, and
Yep.
it's interesting because I see aging as a privilege. It's like I
Yep.
really get that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I also know that I have very few years ahead of me compared to what I have behind me. That's a
Sure.
fact of life. That's a reality. And
Yep.
so I was listening to a podcast with Rich Roll today, and I think it was him who said, do you want to live for 75 years or have 75 of the same years by the end of your life or whatever it was? But basically, do you want to just do the same thing over and over? And it's like, no, I want to really live with passion and live fully and all that. And I'm
Right.
working on my next book right now. It's about
Amazing.
30 years in the speaking industry, and I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. And I don't know if you've heard of the 75 Hard by Andy Frisella.
No.
It's a health protocol. Well, it's a mindset protocol, but you exercise twice a day for 45 minutes. One time is outside. You drink a gallon of water a day. You pick a diet that you want to adhere to. And I'm one of those plant-based vegan eaters that can say, well, I'm vegan, so I don't have to eat healthy foods. I can eat junk foods. Well, it was catching up with me. I'm on day 50 right now. And what a difference. You have to read out of a physical book. It's really amazing. But with that, as I get older, I see a lot of women my age that are resigned to the fact that, well, I'm old. My knees are hurting. I'm 50 to 100 pounds overweight. There's nothing I can do. And I'm like, yes, there is. And
Yep.
the response I sometimes get, more
Yep.
times than not, is you're just
Yep.
lucky, Kathleen. It's like,
Yep.
no, in the last 50 days, I've worked out 100 times. I've
Yep.
drank 50 gallons of water.
Yep.
I've done XXXX, whatever it may be. So what can older women do so that we stay vibrant, we stay healthy?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so it's really fascinating because I love that where this conversation is going because my readers, I get this question almost every day. So I may have someone like yourself who has the capacity to work out, but then I have others who's like, I can't even get up out of bed,
Right.
right? Or I can't even get out of my chair without hurting and whatever. I was like, well, then do what you can do. And what happens if when you start thinking about, I'm going to maximize what I can do on an every single day basis,
Hmm.
whatever that might be,
Hmm.
based on your current level, state level, it will improve because the body still wants to heal and improve. Now, you may not get to the body you were when you were 25. God, I wish I had the body
I'm
I had when I
working
was
on
20.
it.
Yeah, I feel pretty darn good
Actually,
though.
actually, I was a heavy drinker in my 20s. I haven't had a drink in like 42 years, and I was a
Fantastic.
heavy drinker. I was overweight. I was a couch potato. So I don't want to be in my 20s. My mid 30s, I'll take it.
Okay, you pick your decade. But honestly, I feel after the menopause debacle, I feel really good now. But what was interesting is, you just have to decide that you're done living the life that you are, right? And
Love
so
it.
this is like anything. It's your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your relational health, your financial health. It's all a choice, right? And when you understand that and you own it, right? Yes, is it uncomfortable to own something and admit that, yes, you've made maybe some poor choices in the past. Guess what? Welcome to the frickin' human race because we've all done it, right? Just because you see someone at the pinnacle of what you think that is their life, you have no idea what it took for them to get there. Right, the days of working, the long hours, the slogging. People are like, oh, you're a doctor, you've done all these things. Like, yeah, do you realize there was 11 years, including college, of long days, long nights, missing birthdays, missing family
Hmm.
stuff, working, in my nose in a book somewhere. Those are the things, those are the sacrifices. You get to choose what your outcome is, right? Now, granted, there are some on occasional external extenuating circumstances. Maybe you're in an accident or something that is unfortunate, but still, you're still here breathing. You get to make a choice. And until you are no longer on this earth as a living, human, breathing person, every single day is a choice. And when you accept that and you live it, guess what? Life just starts, you start seeing opportunities that were always there, but they were hidden behind your closed mind. And when you open those doors, you're like, oh my goodness, who knew I could do this? Who knew I could do
Absolutely.
that? What? Or living outside or refusing to believe dogma that you're hearing, like someone tells you you're always going to have diabetes. No, you don't have to always have, unless it's type 1. That's another discussion.
Right.
But type 2 diabetes, which 95% of the people have, insulin resistant, you get to make a different choice. You get to decide what goes in your mouth. Every single day. You get to decide if you move your body, even if it's limited capacity. You get to choose what thoughts get to live in your head rent free. Literally, you get to choose how you intervolve with the people around you. You get to choose who gets to stay in your life. All of those are choices every single day, and they compound one way or the other. But they all make a difference in how you live your life and your health all overall. Because if you have good and vibrant health, there's so many other things. I will take health
Absolutely.
over anything else in my entire life,
Yeah, the
outside of
rest of it we can, yeah, we can
my
figure
family.
out the rest, our with our health. And
Yeah,
it's interesting because when I first started this 75 hard program, and he keeps emphasizing this is not a weight loss program. This is absolutely a mind transformation and a mind
yep,
toughness,
you
mental
have to.
toughness. And I had some issues with one of my feet. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I would go out and do the exercise, but I was hobbling as I was walking. So I actually went to the Good Feet store, got some inserts. It was quite an investment, but it
Yeah,
was worth it. And
yeah,
yesterday I was walking and I had no pain at all. And I'm like, oh, that was
yeah,
worth every penny that I
yeah.
invested because with that now I can do so much more. So, well, I
Yes.
want to ask you on the three habits. You had talked three habits that you give people that you work with,
Oh,
as I recall.
the five, the first five, is that the one you're talking about?
Either first three or first five, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's the first five.
Yep.
What are when somebody comes to you, brand new patient, and they're
Mm-hmm.
ready for a change. They've had enough pain in their life of living in a way that they don't want to live. They want to have a vibrant life. What are the first 3 to 5 things that you recommend to them?
So this is made for someone who's literally lived to be the victim in their life, right? And they
Mhm.
finally said, enough is enough, but I
Right.
don't know how to start. And they go and read and they're watching influencers and they're like, get up and spend 2 hours doing this or this and that. And you're like,
Hmm.
that is just too much, right? So
Right.
this is where we talk about micro habits, right?
Okay.
And really thinking, what is the one few habits that I can do, one that are very easy to do? that have a bigger impact, that have a ripple effect across your day and across your life, your relationships. This is where that framework was born. So I really want you to understand anybody can employ it. And I've had readers, these are people I don't know. I have an audience in I think 126 countries on
Mm.
Substack. And it has grown. It blew up from zero on January 6th to I'm pushing close to 17,000 subscribers right now. And it's what
Oh
been
my
10 months.
gosh.
And so
That's
it's been
amazing.
really fun. I had a literary agent reach out from me for the UK. I've already signed a book deal. And so these are
Wow.
things that are important. And what's cool though is the readers read these things and they are using them and they're sending me messages or they're commenting like, this, I've changed my life. I've lowered my blood sugars. But I want to frame this as this is for someone, it could be anyone, but especially if you're really struggling, like, I don't even know where to begin to start
Mm-hmm.
making right and
Mm-hmm.
healthy
Mm-hmm.
choices. Maybe they're struggling with, really poor self-esteem or they're dealing with people who are not there to support them. This is where you can do this. It's just for you. You don't have to tell anyone you're doing it. It's just you. And so when you think of it, it's like, and I call it the first five. And so what we're really looking at is to regulate stress. We're activating the reward pathways that make us a habit. We're going to restore your own agency to make your own choices and build consistency because it's so simple. It takes literally 5 minutes. So first thing is you do when you wake up in the morning is you drink water. You are
Mm-hmm.
woken up from a fast, right? So when you just drink one full glass of water, just one, and that's before caffeine, that's before screens, that's before anything, okay? Because it replenishes your hydration, dehydration. This tells your body, I'm tending to my body. I'm hydrating my body. You're watering your garden for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain works better when it's hydrated. Everything works better when it's hydrated. Most of your body is water. So just remember that. One is breathe, right? So, just basically close your eyes. You take one slow inhale, then exhale slower and longer than you inhaled. And what you're doing is you're activating the vagus nerve, your parasympathetic nervous
Mm.
system that calms things down. And you repeat that 2 or 3 times. So now you're walking into your day hydrated and less stress, right? You're not on alert. You haven't just been laid in bed and look at your phone like, oh my gosh, I have 10 emails. Oh, did you see the news? They're doing this in, wherever. No, 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 no. We're going to start a day with the habit of we walk into this day with calm, hydration, and we're going to allow us to make different decisions. One is intention. And I really say this because this is where it becomes more personal. And you get to say a phrase to connect the person you want to become. Okay. So one, maybe it's today I return to myself. One healing habit is enough. Maybe that healing habit is hydration. I'm not behind. I'm just beginning. My body is listening and I am too, right? So whatever it is, today I am loving myself. Today I walk in through this day and I'm going to be kind to myself and others. I don't care whatever that is, whatever is meaningful for you today, right now. That might change every day. It might be the same for 6 months. It doesn't matter. Whatever is important to you. And don't let someone else's intentions come,
Mm-hmm.
flooding yours.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
choose what you want. And this is really important because when I have patients who come to see me, I have them fill out a little form and we talk about values. I want to understand what's valuable to them because it changes how I think about, what's
Mm-hmm.
important when I talk to
Mm-hmm.
this patient. I ask them, what are the three most important values? I had one patient said, I don't know. I've never thought of that. And I,
Wow.
I sat there a little stunned because this is a woman in her 60s and she's never thought about what her values are. So basically you're like a ship without a rudder, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're just being guided by the winds that are just continually blowing you into whatever direction the wind happens to be blowing. I was like, how sad that someone doesn't have agency on their own life. And this is where that setting intentions connects you to what's valuable to you in your heart at that moment in
Mm-hmm.
that day.
Mm-hmm.
And the last two, one is stillness, right? Just sit and stand in silence just for a minute. It could be while you're breathing, just letting it out, but just being still, right? I would love for you to be able to do that outside, or at least by a window, just to be present, right? And so that's kind of where the fifth one is presence, because I just want you to feel everything, be present, anchor into something that's real right
Right.
now, right? Is
Right.
it a flower? Is it your plant? Is it a pet? Is it the hum of the fan? I don't care what that is, but it just anchors you into something. If it tends to be more towards nature, that's even better.
Right.
If you have running water near you, again, a green space, just something that you're like, I'm here, I'm right now. Right now is the only moment that
Hmm.
I can do anything about. And so this is the moment that I have. And so I will be present. And the more present you are through the day, your whole life changes. And so that's the first five.
I love it because what I know to be true is that people are very disconnected from their bodies.
Hmm.
They're very disconnected from their mind and their spirit. And, they're constantly on their device. You go to the grocery store and people are walking down the aisle looking at text messages and all that. And, so I love what you're saying. And I want to remind people you're listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, and I'm talking with Dr. Lori Marbas. And we're having an amazing discussion about just how to live a life with significance and
Hmm.
passion and purpose.
Hmm.
With the plant-based eating, I know that, the one big attack that we who identify as vegan plant-based eaters, it's like, well, where do you get your B vitamin? It's like, well, most people need that anyway. So what are some supplements that people who are on 100% whole food, not ultra processed foods, not
Right.
packaged foods, but
Yeah.
whole food? What are some supplements? And then I want to add to that, how do you feel about creatine?
Oh, I love creatine.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
good. I'm getting so many good marks with this.
I love it. So let me just start by stating, um, as I dive deeper into longevity research and understanding what our humans' bodies need throughout different decades, because what you need as a newborn is different from a
Mhm.
toddler, a teenager, middle, 20s, 30s, 40s, middle age, and older, right?
Mhm.
Things shift and change. And you absolutely can get all your nutrient needs in a whole food plant-based diet, but you
Okay.
need to be paying attention. Okay. So, what's interesting in my experience with patients is those who don't do well on a plant-based diet, because you'll hear people like, oh, I tried that for a month or so and I didn't feel good. I felt tired, is that they didn't quite employ it correctly. So, a
Mhm.
couple of reasons for that. One is they got all the ultra processed foods, right? So, they just went all junk food plant-based versus a whole food plant-based diet. They restricted a whole food plant-based diet. They heard, oh, I can't, maybe I should eat all fruits just for breakfast, or I should
Mhm.
eat a
Mhm.
pound of one vegetable, or I should only do potatoes, or
Mhm.
only I do this, or they ate beans and they got gas, so they cut out all beans. And oh, I heard soy was bad for you, so I don't do soy. So
Mhm.
when we start restricting an already restrictive diet, right? So we've cut out animal products that do come with some nutrients, and I'm not going to dismiss that because
Right.
that is absolutely true. We have to be a little bit more focused and aware of what we're doing. So eat all of them. A lot of whole food plant-based folks are fat phobic because they're like, oh, nuts and seeds can be harmful. They're very calorically dense. If you want to lose weight, yes, you need to be mindful of how much, a handful of nuts and seeds, in particular, ground flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, but any nuts and seeds, a handful a day actually will bring you minerals and certain vitamins that you won't get as well as others. Plus, you get good, healthy fats. It's not quickly absorbed like, oils or things like that.
Mhm.
So when people start, and there's no evidence to show that nuts and seeds actually accelerate heart disease. It just doesn't exist when you look at the
Right.
data. And so, again, and that also helps us absorb fat soluble vitamins like vitamin D, A, E, and K. So these are important. So when people start becoming so restrictive and they're cutting out big swaths of already a restricted diet, this is when they have struggles.
Okay.
And or they're not supplementing their B12. B12 is made by bacteria, guys. It's not made by animals and it's not made by plants. It lives in water, in dirt. So back in the day, when we pulled our food and fruits and veggies and stuff out of the dirt and we, washed our bodies and drank out of rivers
Mhm.
that weren't being filtered and chlorinated, we would probably get enough of that little bit of B12 that we needed. I spent 2 weeks in rural Uganda when did a mission trip about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And these folks ate primarily a plant-based diet because one, they would reject poverty. Like just there was no running water, no
Mhm.
electricity. And to imagine feeding a cow and then slaughtering it one time didn't make any sense. Now they did
Right.
have some chickens, they did have some eggs, but they weren't taking a B12 supplement. but they were pulling those, foods out of the ground and eating them. They were
Mhm.
drinking the water. Now, granted, they had other issues, like waterborne illnesses and some other things and
Right.
infections. So we live in this modern society. We need a B12 supplement. Many people are taking medications like medications for proton pump inhibitors or things that decrease the acid production in your stomach, so you won't absorb B12 as well. Metformin for
Mhm.
prediabetes,
Mhm.
diabetes also decreases it. So you need probably, typically in my experience, 500 to 1,000 micrograms per day. Most people, not everyone. You need to measure a few things. You can measure B12 levels, homocysteine, and methylmalonic acid. Now, B12, when you get your blood checked, you want to be above 500 because below 500, even in the research data, especially below 400, you will still see signs of B12 deficiency. That could be
Mm.
fatigue, nerve pain, tingling, things like that. And then you probably don't want to be over around 1100. So that sweet spot is between 500 and 1100 on a B12 test. Okay. Homocysteine is interesting. It's a molecule in your body that requires B12, B6, B9 to actually be further metabolized.
Mhm.
And when you don't have enough B12, it can be elevated. Now, the important thing to understand is when homocysteine is above 10, you run a higher risk of clotting and stroke.
Mm.
And so when you have someone who's on a plant-based diet, they're not supplementing appropriately B12, there's a lot of things that can result from that.
Mhm.
So B12 is the non-negotiable one supplement on this plant-based diet. Now, what are some of
Okay.
the others that I find people benefit from 95% of the time? Vitamin D. Majority of us are low. Even when I was living in Florida, running 10 miles a day, uh, not every day, but I'd run out. I didn't
Right.
wear sunscreen. Mine never hit above 29. Like I could not get, and I'm white, guys. If you look at me, I'm white. Like I should be able to, produce vitamin D.
She's very
Um,
white.
very white. But there was no vitamin D being made, very little. And so I supplemented vitamin D even during the summer in Florida outside. And so
Okay.
if you're dark skinned or live at higher latitudes, you're going to probably need vitamin D. Vitamin D is very important. It's actually a prohormone. And when you look at that, what that means is that it acts in the body like a hormone. And it's important for your immune system. It's important for so many things. I've seen people dealing with fatigue. I've seen people dealing with increased risk of autoimmune disease when they're low in vitamin D. So make sure you're getting your vitamin D. Best levels, definitely above 30. It's also, of course, important for calcium absorption and bone health. But keep it above 30. You don't want to be probably above 80. So the sweet spot's around 40 to 60.
Okay.
And so most people need between 2 to 4,000 international units daily. The thing to understand is some people think, oh, I take a super mega dose, so the more the better. No, you can actually become toxic. This is a fat soluble vitamin, meaning that it's stored in your fat, and
Mm.
it's not like a water soluble vitamin like B12 where you pee it out.
Right.
So you can become toxic on vitamin D. And why waste your money? So
Okay.
when you look at that, the last two are algae omega 3s. So, like I mentioned before, a lot of people are quote unquote fat phobic. And when you do what we call an omega check, you can check your levels in omega check. These are your long chain fatty acids, which are important for heart and brain health.
Hmm.
And the majority of my plant-based eaters, because they're not eating enough nuts and seeds, and even if they do eat a lot of nuts and seeds, many times they're not quite at the level above 5.5 on the
Okay.
omega check. So I would tell them to supplement probably two algae omega 3s. Now, algae is literally where the omegas are. The fish get it from the algae. You don't have to eat the fish. You don't have to
Right.
take fish. These are literally the algae. So this is a vegan friendly option. So those are the three. Now the fourth one is creatine. So when I speak about, and you
Yay.
mentioned creatine, creatine is an interesting molecule. It's not really an amino acid, but what it does is creatine is absorbed by your cells. So we make creatine. After menopause, we make less of it.
Okay.
So when you eat meat and things that have creatine in it, that's another source. But on a whole food plant-based diet, you're not going to have that
Right.
resource because you're not eating animals. So what's important about creatine is that it sits in your cell. And so when you have to think about mitochondria is they are the key to energy throughout your body. Mitochondria are these little powerful little factories that sit inside your cells and they make your currency of energy in your body called ATP. Okay.
Okay.
Adenosine triphosphate. And the cool thing about this is the creatine, when you're working hard and exercising or you're thinking really, like your brain is very metabolically active. It uses 20% of your energy per day, like your glucose energy, right? And it's only a 3 pound organ, so it's very metabolically active. The other really big things you're feeding are your metabolic muscle, like your musculoskeletal system, like your skeletal muscles, right? So those are the important things to understand that the creatine, what it does is it sits there and it donates an extra phosphate to the machinery of the mitochondria to make more ATP. So it allows you to have more energy, right? So you feel stronger. You can get, that's why the bros in the gym use it, right?
Right.
You will notice that it will absorb a little bit of water because as the creatine is absorbed, it goes into the muscle,
Hmm.
it hydrates the muscle. But you will find that your strength improves. You're able to probably move more, be stronger. But when you go above the 5 grams, you start hitting 10 and 15 grams per day, your brain gets the rest. So
Hmm.
that first 5 grams, the skeletal muscle is absorbing most of that, if not all of it. And when you start hitting that 10 to 15 grams, your brain gets started. And so what you find is some really interesting studies showing that there was a small study with Alzheimer's patients, and
Hmm.
I can't remember exactly the number, but what they found is they were giving them 20 grams of protein per day, and they actually had improvement in a relatively short period of time. I believe it was 3 to 6 months in their cognitive skills. And these are all early Alzheimer's patients. So now
Hmm.
imagine if you had that capacity without Alzheimer's. What is that going to do? And now you're working in a plant-based brain, right? You don't have that resource coming from food. You get to even see bigger benefits. And because, again, you're not getting it from any animal products. And when you start supplementing creatine, and it's a very cheap powder typically, it's one of the most studied supplements in the world. Um, there's minimal side effects. I would say if you have any chronic kidney disease, you would want to speak to your nephrologist first. Um, but outside of that, it might cause a little GI symptoms in some people. So just start really tiny,
Right.
small. But I would recommend 10 grams per day, if not
Well,
even
good.
15
I'm
grams.
spot on then because I do between 10 and 15 grams.
Yep.
I do 5 grams in the morning with, and here's kind of like my morning protocol. I have a power drink with a banana, some kind of a berry in it, usually a frozen berry. I put in chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp hearts, and I put some turmeric with black pepper, and then I add in 5 grams of creatine. That's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
start of my day. Then
Mm-hmm.
before I go to the gym, I'll fill my water bottle, put some creatine in there, try to drink it within an hour. And if I have a second workout later in the day, I'm at maybe a bike ride. I do another bottle of water with 5 grams. So I'm kind of average of 10 grams. And it's interesting because I had read a lot of the studies and it said if you're doing creatine, tell your doctor because your kidney
Creatine, your
numbers,
creatinine will
yeah,
go up,
can really be skewed and they think you have kidney disease. I was
but you
actually
don't.
talking to a cousin recently who her kidney numbers were off. And I said something about, do you take creatine? She goes, well, yeah. And I said,
Mm.
well, you might tell your doctor that, do you
Yeah.
advise that?
Yeah, you definitely want to tell your doctor, and because it might bump it up about zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2 on your
Boy, I would be your
creatinine.
star patient. If I was your patient, I would be your star patient.
You would be my patient that comes by once a year and says, "Hey, how am I doing? Good. I'll see you next year." That's the type, and those are amazing patients. I wish
Well,
the majority of my patients were like that.
I had my physician assistant recently. She said, "You're not profitable to the healthcare system." It's like, good.
Oh,
I want to keep it
shucks.
that way. I want to keep it that
Darn.
way. So, well, Dr. Marbas, this has been amazing. I've so enjoyed this conversation. And in closing, what are your final thoughts for people, or is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, I think, talking about habits and health are some of my favorite things. The longevity piece is really important. I have an article coming out on, is it Tuesday or Saturday? I can't remember. And I publish 4 newsletters per week, all about biological versus chronological age and the 4 habits
Ah,
that can reverse or alter that aging process. So that's fascinating to me. But really, understanding, I think just to put it all in just a few words, is that your daily habits count and don't dismiss, and if you quote unquote fall off the wagon one day, you have to get back on the wagon the very next day or the very next bite or the very next meal. There's no choice. Like you just do it.
I
Just do
love
it.
that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because, like I said, I haven't had a drink in well over 4 decades, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
I fall down a lot and I black out a lot with alcohol. And for me, I can't even take one drink. And I've had people say, after this long, you couldn't? No, I don't even want to mess with it. And it's the same with our health. I mean, I
Right.
do know that sugar is deadly to me because I
Yep.
can't stop at one little piece of chocolate or
Yeah.
vegan chocolate, whatever it may be. I
Yep.
can't stop with that. And
Yep.
I know that about myself. And I think that what you've shared today is going to help people to understand that in many ways we are addicted to the bad lifestyle choices and we can get very addicted to the good lifestyle choices. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Marbas, how can people find you? What's the,
Yeah.
besides the Substack, what's your website?
The simplest is just drmarbers.com.
Okay,
Really
great.
simple.
We'll
Yeah.
we'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
Great.
And thank you so much for your time and attention. This has been amazing, and I look forward to this episode going live and people listening and sharing it all over the place. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. You too.
You've been listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, inviting you to subscribe to this channel wherever you're listening or watching the show. And please let your friends know about the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show. Live healthy.